You said I wasn't impressive enough? How's that for unimpressive?
The words hit me like a slap across the face at 2 in the morning, delivered with the casual cruelty that only comes from too much wine and years of buried resentment. Jack, let's be honest here, Lila said, swirling her third glass of Chardonnay as she leaned against our granite kitchen counter. My friends think you're not impressive enough for me. Maybe I should aim higher. I looked up from my laptop where I'd been reviewing insurance claims, the blue light casting shadows across our pristine kitchen. 20 years as a claims adjuster had taught me to read people, to spot the lies in their carefully constructed stories. But hearing it from my own wife of 8 years still caught me off guard. Is that right? I said, keeping my voice level. The sarcasm was there, just beneath the surface, waiting. Tasha said it tonight at dinner. She asked what you actually do all day, and when I tried to explain insurance work, she just laughed. Lila's perfectly manicured fingers drummed against the counter. Brett makes 6 figures in real estate development. He drives a BMW. He takes Tasha to Napa Valley. Brett Kinney. Of course. I'd met him twice at Lila's social gatherings, all flash and no substance. The kind of guy who wore his Rolex like a tool and name-dropped his latest deal within 5 minutes of meeting you. And what did you tell Tasha? I asked, closing the laptop slowly. I told her you were reliable. The way she said it made it sound like a disease. I stood up, walked to the window overlooking our backyard. The workshop I'd built with my own hands sat in the corner, where I restored vintage furniture in my spare time. Apparently, that wasn't impressive enough either. Well then, I said, turning back to face her, go ahead and aim higher. Lila blinked, clearly expecting an argument or pleading. What's that supposed to mean? It means exactly what I said. If I'm not impressive enough, if reliable isn't good enough anymore, then maybe you should find someone who is. She laughed, but it sounded forced. Don't be dramatic, Jack. I'm just saying we could do better. Your birthday gift to me is dinner at Olive Garden. Brett took Tasha to that new steakhouse in Portland and spent $300. My gift to you, as I said quietly, was going to be a surprise weekend in Boston. Hotel overlooking the harbor, tickets to that play you mentioned, dinner at the restaurant where we had our first date. I paused, watching her face change. But you're right, that's not impressive enough. I walked past her toward the stairs, then stopped. By the way, your birthday party next week? The one at the country club you've been planning for months? I canceled the reservation this afternoon, along with the weekend trip. Seemed like the reliable thing to do, given the circumstances. The wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering against the tile floor. You did what? Canceled it. Also transferred our joint savings into my personal account. Turns out being an insurance adjuster teaches you a lot about protecting assets. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Sleep well, honey. Dream about aiming higher. I left her standing there among the broken glass and wine stains, her mouth open in shock. In my workshop that night, I installed 3 hidden cameras with audio recording. Just in case things got interesting. They always do. The call came at 4:17 in the morning, 3 days after Lila's little speech about aiming higher. I'd been sleeping in the guest room since our kitchen conversation, and the phone's shrill ring cut through the darkness like a knife. Jack? Tasha's voice was frantic, slurred with alcohol and panic. Something happened at Lila's party. You need to come. I sat up, instantly alert. What party? The birthday party at my house. We had it anyway, even after you canceled the club thing. But Jack, something's wrong. Really wrong. Through the phone, I could hear crying, multiple voices talking over each other, the chaos of panic. Then Lila's voice, distant but audible. Where's all our money? The accounts are empty. I almost laughed. Almost. Put Lila on the phone, I said. Jack! Lila's voice was thick with tears and wine. Someone robbed us. All our money's gone from the joint account. And now the restaurant bill is $4,000, and my card got declined, and let me stop you right there, I said, getting out of bed and walking to the window. Dawn was still hours away, but I could see lights on in houses across the neighborhood. Word traveled fast in small towns. I moved that money to my personal account 3 days ago, remember? Right after you told me I wasn't impressive enough? Silence. Then, you can't do that. It's our money. Actually, I can. Funny thing about joint accounts, either party can move the funds. It's completely legal. I learned that investigating insurance fraud cases. Jack, please. There are 30 people here. The bill is huge. I'm embarrassed. You're embarrassed? I couldn't keep the sarcasm out of my voice now. Imagine how I felt when my wife told me her friends think I'm not good enough for her. I didn't mean, you meant every word. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to figure out how to pay that bill yourself. Maybe ask Brett to help. I hear he makes 6 figures. I hung up and turned off the phone. Then I packed a bag, loaded it into my truck, and headed for my sister Dana's place across town. She was working the night shift at the hospital, but she'd left me a key years ago for emergencies. This qualified. The road to Dana's house wound through the old part of town, past the mill that had closed 10 years ago, and the diner that stayed open all night for truckers. I was thinking about coffee, about calling in sick to work, about how good it felt to finally stop being the reliable one. I never saw the other car coming. The impact hit my driver's side door like a sledgehammer, spinning my truck off the road and into the ditch beside Miller's Creek. The world went sideways, then upside down, then black. I woke up 3 days later in Maine General Hospital, unable to move anything below my chest and barely able to speak. The first face I saw was Lila's, streaked with tears that looked almost genuine. "Oh God, Jack, you're awake," she whispered, gripping my hand. I couldn't feel her touch. "The doctors weren't sure. There was so much damage," and Dr. Martinez appeared beside her, a tired-looking man in his 50s with kind eyes and bad news written across his face. "Burke, you've suffered severe spinal trauma. We've managed to stabilize you, but the paralysis appears to be permanent. I'm sorry." Permanent. The word echoed in my head as I tried to process what that meant. No more workshop. No more restoring furniture. No more walking away from conversations with my wife. "The police want to talk to you when you're ready," Dr. Martinez continued. "The other driver fled the scene, hit and run. But right now, you need to focus on healing." Lila squeezed my hand again, and this time I caught something in her expression. Relief? No, that couldn't be right. "Don't worry, baby," she said, loud enough for the doctor to hear. "I'm going to take such good care of you, whatever you need." Dr. Martinez smiled and left us alone. The moment the door closed, Lila's expression changed completely. She leaned close to my ear, her voice dropping to a whisper. "This is perfect, actually. Now you can't leave me, and I can do whatever I want. Brett says paralyzed husbands make the best husbands. They can't complain or cause trouble." She straightened up, smoothing her hair, and smiled that perfect smile she used for her friends. "I'm going to go call everyone and tell them how brave you're being. Try not to drool while I'm gone." As she walked away, her heels clicking against the hospital floor, I realized 2 things. First, my accident probably wasn't an accident at all. Second, being underestimated had just become my greatest tool. I couldn't move my legs, but my mind was working just fine. And 20 years of investigating insurance fraud had taught me that the truth always comes out eventually, usually when people least expect it. The next 2 weeks taught me more about my wife than 8 years of marriage ever had. When the doctors and nurses were around, Lila was the picture of devoted care, fluffing pillows, bringing flowers, talking about how we'd get through this together. When we were alone, she was something else entirely. "Oops," she said on Tuesday morning, knocking over my water cup so the contents spilled across my chest. "So clumsy of me. I'll get a nurse to change your gown in a few hours." The water was ice cold, and I couldn't move to get away from it. I tried to speak, but my voice was still weak, barely above a whisper. "Did you say something?" Lila leaned closer, pretending to listen. "No, must have been the wind." She did things like that constantly. Moved my pain medication just out of reach of the call button. Told the nurses I'd been sleeping well when I'd been awake all night. Shared details about my condition with her friends, laughing about how helpless I was. But she made a mistake. She got comfortable, and comfortable people that get careless. On Thursday afternoon, she was on the phone with Brett, thinking I was asleep. They were planning something, and they weren't being subtle about it. "The house is in both our names, but with him like this, I can handle everything," she was saying. "Power of attorney is easy to get when your husband can barely speak." Brett's voice was tinny through the phone speaker, but I caught enough. "What about the insurance money from the accident? That's the beautiful part. Hit and run means uninsured motorist coverage kicks in. Could be $500,000, maybe more. And guess who gets to manage it all?" I kept my breathing steady, my eyes closed, while they planned out my life like I was already dead. The accident insurance, the house, my personal accounts that she didn't know I'd protected with a trust. "When do you think we can make it official?" Brett asked. "Give it a few months." Let him get settled into being helpless. Then we can start talking about how hard it is for me, how I need companionship. People will understand. After she hung up, I spent the rest of the afternoon thinking. My legs might not work, but my brain was functioning perfectly, and I'd spent 20 years learning how people try to defraud insurance companies. I knew all their tricks because I'd seen them before. That night, I started testing my limits. The doctors had said the paralysis was likely permanent, but likely wasn't certain. I focused on small movements, a finger twitch, a toe that might have shifted slightly. Nothing dramatic, nothing anyone would notice. But something was there, faint, but there. By Friday, I could whisper loudly enough to be heard, though I was careful to only do it when Lila wasn't around. The night nurse, a young woman named Amy, was kind and actually listened when I spoke. "Mrs. Burke seems very devoted," she said while checking my vitals. "She's something," I managed. Amy must have heard something in my voice because she looked at me more carefully. "Is everything okay, Mr. Burke? You seem, troubled." I wanted to tell her everything. About the phone calls, about Lila's behavior when no one was watching, about my growing suspicion that my accident hadn't been random. But I needed proof first. I needed to be smart about this. "Just tired," I said. "Recovery is hard." That weekend, Lila brought Tasha and another friend, Simone, to visit. They clustered around my bed like vultures, speaking in loud, patronizing voices. "Jack, you look so much better," Tasha gushed. "Lila's been taking such good care of you." "It's been so hard on her," Simone added. "She's been crying every night and worried about the future, about money." I watched Lila's face during this performance. She was loving every minute of it. The attention, the sympathy, the way her friends praised her sacrifice. She'd found a way to be the victim and the hero at the same time. "The insurance company called today," Lila announced. "They want to discuss the settlement. It's going to be substantial." Tasha's eyes lit up. "That's wonderful. At least something good can come from this tragedy. Brett's been helping me understand the paperwork," Lila continued. "He knows about these things." Of course he did. Brett knew about a lot of things, apparently. After they left, I lay in the dark thinking about timing, about evidence, about the fact that I'd installed those cameras in my workshop just days before the accident, and they were still recording everything that happened in my backyard, including, possibly, conversations between my wife and her boyfriend about how convenient my paralysis was for their plans. On Sunday night, I managed to reach the phone beside my bed. It took 3 tries and left me exhausted. But I did it. I dialed my sister's number and waited. "Dana," I whispered when she answered. "I need help." Dana arrived at the hospital at 2 in the morning, dressed in scrubs and carrying a wheelchair that looked official enough to fool anyone who didn't look too closely. My sister had always been the tough one in our family, 5 years younger than me, but she'd been protecting people since she was old enough to throw a punch. "This is insane, Jack," she whispered as she helped me into the wheelchair. "If they catch us." "They won't. You know this hospital better than anyone." I was still weak, but the feeling had been gradually returning to my legs over the past few days. Not enough to walk, but enough to give me hope. Besides, I'm checking myself out. It's not kidnapping if it's voluntary. We made it to the parking garage without incident. Dana had borrowed a friend's van, modified for wheelchair access, and within 20 minutes, we were pulling into the driveway of her small house on the other side of town. "Lila's going to lose her mind when she finds out you're gone," Dana said as she helped me inside. "That's the idea." I'd been planning this moment for days. The first call was to Ray Hutchins, a former coworker who'd left the insurance company 5 years ago to start his own private investigation business. Ray was cynical, thorough, and owed me a favor from back when I'd helped him prove a workers' comp fraud case. "Jack Burke," Ray's gravelly voice came through the phone. "Heard you were in a bad way." "Not as bad as people think. I need your help, Ray, and I need it quiet." "What kind of help?" "The kind that involves surveillance, financial records, and proving that my loving wife is planning to rob me blind while I'm supposedly helpless." Ray was quiet for a moment. "That's a serious accusation. I've got serious evidence, or I will once you help me get it." We met the next morning at Ray's office, a cramped space above a sandwich shop downtown. I was using a walker now. Dana had been right about the paralysis not being as permanent as the doctors thought. My legs were weak, but they worked. "So what exactly are we looking at here?" Ray asked, pouring coffee that could strip paint. I told him everything. The birthday party disaster, the accident, Lila's behavior at the hospital, the phone calls I'd overheard. Ray took notes, occasionally grunting or asking questions. You think the accident was intentional? I think it was awfully convenient timing, and I think Brett Kinney knows more about it than he's letting on. Ray leaned back in his chair. Proving attempted homicide is a tall order, Jack, but proving fraud, that's something we can work with. We started with the basics. Ray pulled financial records on both Lila and Brett, cross-referencing their spending patterns and looking for connections. What we found was interesting. Your wife's been spending money like it's going out of style, Ray said, spreading papers across his desk. New clothes, expensive dinners, a weekend trip to Boston. Hey, wasn't that supposed to be your gift to her? She took Brett instead. I saw the hotel charges on our credit card statement. And Brett's been having cash flow problems with his real estate business. 3 properties in foreclosure, 2 lawsuits from investors. Guy's desperate. The picture was getting clearer. Brett needed money. Lila wanted a more impressive husband. And my accident had solved both their problems. Or so they thought. I need you to put surveillance on both of them. I said, especially when they're together, and I want to know everything about that accident. Police reports, witness statements, anything you can find. Ray nodded. This is going to take time, Jack, and money. I've got both. What I don't have is patience. That afternoon, while Ray started his investigation, I made another call. To my lawyer, Tom Stevens, who'd handled our house purchase and wills. Jack, I heard about the accident. How are you holding up? Better than expected, Tom. Listen, I need some legal advice about asset protection. Of course, what's the situation? I explained about Lila's plans for power of attorney, about her spending, about my suspicions regarding the accident. Tom listened without interruption. Jesus, Jack, if even half of that is true, it's all true. The question is, how do I protect myself legally? First thing, we revoke any existing power of attorney documents and make sure she can't get new ones. Second, we look at separating your assets. If she's planning to divorce you and take half, we need to be ready. What about the house? Joint ownership is tricky, but if we can prove she's been using marital assets for an affair, that changes things. Maine's not a no-fault state when it comes to adultery. By the end of the week, I had a plan. Ray's surveillance had already caught Lila and Brett together 3 times, including a very intimate dinner at the same restaurant where she'd complained about my lack of impressiveness. The photos were clear, the timeline was solid, and their behavior was getting bolder. But I wanted more than just evidence of adultery. I wanted to know about the accident. Ray called on Friday with news. Found something interesting about your hit and run, Jack. The police report mentions paint transfer on your truck. Dark blue metallic. Guess what color Brett's BMW is? Dark blue metallic. Bingo. And guess who had bodywork done on his car 3 days after your accident? I felt something cold settle in my stomach. It was one thing to suspect, another to know for certain. Can we prove it? Working on it. The body shop keeps records, and I've got a friend who can take a look at the repair invoices. But Jack, if we're right about this, we're talking about attempted homicide. We're talking about a man who tried to end me so he could steal my wife and my money, I said. The question is, what are we going to do about it? Ray's evidence came together like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, each new detail making the picture clearer and more incriminating. The body shop records showed Brett had paid cash for repairs to his BMW's front bumper and headlight, work done 3 days after my accident. Paint samples from my truck matched his car's color exactly. But the most interesting discovery came from the surveillance. They're not just having an affair, Ray said, spreading photos across Dana's kitchen table. They're running a con game. The photos showed Lila and Brett meeting with various people around town. Potential clients for her event planning business, investors in Brett's real estate deals. But according to the financial records Ray had obtained, many of these businesses didn't exist. She's been creating fake invoices for events that never happened, Ray explained. Wedding receptions, corporate parties, anniversary celebrations, all fictional. The money goes into her business account, then gets transferred to Brett's company as venue rental fees. Money laundering, I said. Exactly. And they've been doing it for months, probably since before your accident. My guess is they needed you out of the way because you'd have spotted the fraud eventually. I studied the photographs, feeling a familiar anger building in my chest. Not just at the betrayal, but at the sheer arrogance of it. They'd tried to end me, then planned to steal from me while I was helpless in a hospital bed. How much money are we talking about? So far, about $200,000. But that's just what I can prove. There's probably more. $200,000. Money from our joint accounts, from my insurance settlement, from clients who thought they were paying for legitimate services. All of it funneled into Brett's failing business, while Lila played the devoted wife. I want to take them down, I said. Both of them. Completely. Ray looked at me carefully. Jack, I understand you're angry, but if we're going to do this, we need to do it smart, legal. We can't just... I'm not talking about vigilante justice, I interrupted. I'm talking about using the system. Fraud charges, attempted homicide, theft. Let the law handle it. And what about Lila? You still married to her? That was the question I'd been avoiding. Legally, yes, we were still married. Emotionally, that marriage had ended the night she told me I wasn't impressive enough. Not for much longer. Over the next 2 weeks, I put my plan into motion. The first step was securing my assets. With Tom Stevens' help, I transferred ownership of the house to a trust, moved my personal accounts to a different bank, and made sure Lila couldn't access anything without my explicit consent. The second step was gathering more evidence. Ray's surveillance operation expanded to include audio recordings. Perfectly legal in Maine, as long as one party to the conversation consents. And since they were discussing crimes against me, I figured I qualified. The recordings were enlightening. Jack's starting to get suspicious. Lila's voice came through Ray's equipment clearly. They were having lunch at a restaurant downtown, thinking they were safe from prying ears. What kind of suspicious? Brett asked. He's been asking questions about the insurance settlement, and yesterday he wanted to see the bank statements for my business account. What did you tell him? That the paperwork was at the office. But Brett, he's not as helpless as we thought. The doctors say he might regain more mobility than they originally expected. There was a long pause. Then Brett's voice, lower and more dangerous. Maybe we need to consider other options. What do you mean? I mean, accidents happen all the time in hospitals. Medication mix-ups, equipment failures. It would be tragic, but at least you'd be free to move on with your life. My blood went cold listening to that recording. They weren't just planning to rob me, they were planning to finish what the car accident had started. I can't do that, Brett. I'm not a butcher. You wouldn't have to do anything. I have friends who work in medical supply. A little adjustment to his pain medication, maybe a problem with his oxygen equipment. Just stop talking about it. But the damage was done. I had them on tape discussing my homicide, and that changed everything. The third step was the hardest, pretending nothing had changed. I had to go back to playing the helpless victim while they planned my death. Lila resumed her hospital visits, bringing flowers and fake smiles while I smiled back and pretended to believe her act. You're looking so much better, she said during one visit, adjusting my pillows with exaggerated care. The physical therapist says you might be able to use a wheelchair soon. That would be nice, I said weakly. I hate being so dependent on you for everything. Don't worry about that. I'll take care of you no matter what. The irony was suffocating. She was promising to take care of me while planning to end me, and I was thanking her while planning to destroy her life. But I needed one more piece of evidence before I could make my move. I needed proof of the attempted homicide. Not just the car accident, but their current plans. And for that, I needed to take a risk. Lila, I said during her next visit, I've been thinking about the future, about us. She looked up from her magazine, suddenly alert. What about us? I know this has been hard on you. The accident, the medical bills, taking care of me. I don't want to be a burden. Jack, don't talk like that. You're not a burden, but I am. And I've been thinking, maybe it would be easier for everyone if I just let go. Her eyes widened, but I caught something else in her expression. Hope? What do you mean, let go? I mean, stop fighting so hard. Stop taking the medications. Let nature take its course. Lila was quiet for a long moment, and I could practically see the wheels turning in her head. If I gave up on my own, she wouldn't need Brett's help. She could play the grieving widow, collect the insurance money, and move on with her life. Jack, you can't think like that. You have to keep fighting. But her voice lacked conviction. And when she left that day, she was smiling. The next morning, Ray called with the news I'd been waiting for. She contacted Brett right after leaving the hospital yesterday. They're meeting tonight at his place to discuss speeding things up. I've got the house wired for sound and video. Good, make sure you get everything. Jack, are you sure about this? Once we have them on tape planning your homicide, there's no going back. I thought about Lila's smile, about Brett's casual discussion of medical equipment failures, about the $200,000 they'd stolen, while I lay helpless in a hospital bed. I'm sure, let's finish this. The recording Ray made that night was everything we needed and more. Brett and Lila, thinking they were safe in his living room, laid out their entire plan with the casual efficiency of people who'd done this before. If Jack's really giving up, we just need to help the process along. Brett's voice came through clearly on the tape. A little extra morphine in his IV, maybe disconnect his oxygen for a few minutes. Make it look like his body just couldn't handle the trauma anymore. How do we get access to his medical equipment? Lila asked. I told you, I have connections. My cousin works in medical supply. He can get us what we need. We just need to time it right. What about afterward? You play the devastated widow, collect the insurance money. After a respectable mourning period, we can be together openly. Maybe take a nice long vacation while the insurance company processes the claim. They spent an hour working out details, discussing timing, even planning how Lila would act when she discovered my body. It was chilling to hear my own death discussed like a business transaction. But they made one crucial mistake. They got greedy. What about the money we've already moved? Lila asked. From the business accounts? That's clean. As far as anyone knows, those were legitimate business expenses. Even if someone investigates after Jack dies, they won't find anything suspicious. $200,000 is a lot of money to explain away. It's a drop in the bucket compared to what we'll get from the life insurance. Jack's policy pays out $750,000 for accidental death. Plus the settlement from the car accident. We're looking at over $1 million, Lila. Ray stopped the recording and looked at me across Dana's kitchen table. That's conspiracy to commit homicide, insurance fraud, and theft. We've got them cold. What's our next move? We turn this over to the police and let them handle it. I shook my head. Not yet. I want to confront them first. I want to see their faces when they realize how badly they've miscalculated. Jack, that's dangerous. If they know you're onto them, they'll what? Try to end me? They're already planning that. I stood up, my legs steady now after weeks of physical therapy. Besides, I'm not going in alone. The confrontation happened 3 days later at the annual Founders Day festival in the town square. Half the population of our small Maine town would be there, including Lila and Brett, who'd been making public appearances together as friends supporting each other through difficult times. I arrived with Dana and Ray, walking slowly but steadily with a cane. The sight of me upright and mobile caused quite a stir. Most people thought I was still bedridden and helpless. Lila saw me first. She was standing near the bandstand with Tasha and Simone, laughing at something Brett had said. The color drained from her face when our eyes met. Jack, she called out, her voice carrying across the square. What are you doing here? Should you be out of bed? I walked toward her, aware that we were attracting attention. Good, I wanted witnesses for this. I'm feeling much better, actually, I said, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Amazing what proper medical care can do. Of course, it helps when people aren't trying to sabotage your recovery. Brett stepped forward, all fake concern and expensive cologne. Jack, good to see you up and around. Lila's been so worried about you. I'm sure she has. Worried I might recover enough to notice what you two have been up to. The crowd around us was growing, sensing drama. In a small town, public confrontations were better than television. I don't know what you're talking about, Lila said, but her voice was shaking. Don't you? I reached into my jacket and pulled out a folder full of photographs. Ray's surveillance shots showing them together, bank records documenting the money laundering, repair receipts from Brett's BMW because I know all about your little business arrangement. The fake invoices, the stolen money, even the paint samples that matched Brett's car to my accident. Brett's face went white. You can't prove anything. Actually, I can. I looked around at the crowd, making sure everyone could hear. See, the thing about insurance fraud is that it's my job to investigate it. 20 years of experience teaches you to spot patterns. Like how my loving wife here has been stealing money from her business accounts and funneling it to her boyfriend, while I was supposedly dying in the hospital. That's not true, Lila protested, but her voice cracked. $200,000, Lila. That's how much you've stolen so far. But that wasn't enough, was it? You needed me dead to collect the life insurance. The crowd was murmuring now. shocked whispers spreading through the festival like wildfire. Tasha and Simone had backed away from Lila, suddenly unwilling to be associated with her. "You're delusional," Brett said. But he was looking around nervously, calculating escape routes. "The accident scrambled your brain. The accident you caused when you ran me off the road in your beam." I turned to address the crowd directly. "See, Brett here needed money for his failing real estate business, and my wife needed a more impressive husband. So they decided to solve both problems by getting rid of me." "This is insane," Lila said, tears streaming down her face now. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage and frustration. "Jack, please, you're sick. You need help." "I needed help 3 weeks ago when you were planning to end me with a morphine overdose. Fortunately, I had friends who were willing to record your conversations." That's when Brett made his mistake. Instead of continuing to deny everything, he lost his temper. "You think you're so smart," he snarled, stepping closer to me. "You think you can just destroy people's lives because you're bitter about your wife upgrading to a better man?" "Upgrading?" I laughed, and it was a harsh sound. "Brett, you're broke. Your business is failing. You're facing multiple lawsuits, and you tried to commit homicide to solve your money problems. That's not upgrading, that's desperation." He swung at me then, a wild haymaker that telegraphed itself from a mile away. I sidestepped easily, letting him stumble past me, then brought my cane up sharply into his solar plexus. He went down hard, gasping for air. The crowd erupted in cheers and shocked exclamations. Someone called for the police, who were already pushing through the crowd. Ray had tipped them off about the confrontation. "Brett Kinney," Officer Martinez said as he approached with handcuffs, "you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit homicide, insurance fraud, and attempted vehicular homicide." "Lila Burke," his partner added, "you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit homicide, theft, and money laundering." As they read them their rights, I watched my wife's face crumble. The mask of fake concern and manipulated emotions finally fell away, revealing the calculating, selfish person underneath. "Jack, please," she begged as they cuffed her. "I never wanted to hurt you. It was all Brett's idea." "No, Leela. It was your idea the night you told me I wasn't impressive enough for your friends. Everything else was just following through on that thought." They led her away through a crowd that was now openly hostile. People who'd known us both for years looking at her with disgust and disappointment. Brett was loaded into a separate police car, still gasping and holding his ribs where my cane had connected. As the police cars pulled away, taking my wife and her boyfriend to jail, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: peace. Tasha approached me hesitantly, her face pale with shock. "Jack, I had no idea. I never meant for any of this to happen when I said those things about you not being impressive enough." I looked at her for a long moment. This woman who'd helped destroy my marriage with her casual cruelty and status obsession. "Tasha," I said quietly, "you're right. I'm not impressive. I don't drive a BMW or make 6 figures or take expensive vacations. But I'm smart enough to catch thieves, strong enough to survive homicide attempts, and clever enough to bring down people who think they're better than me." I turned to walk away, then stopped and looked back at her one more time. "How's that for impressive?" The trial lasted 3 weeks. Brett got 15 years for attempted homicide and fraud. Lila got 10 years for conspiracy and theft. The insurance company recovered most of the stolen money, and I got a settlement that was large enough to buy a new house and start over somewhere else. But I didn't leave town. This was my home, and I wasn't about to let them drive me away from it. Instead, I opened my own private investigation business, specializing in insurance fraud and matrimonial cases. Turns out there's a lot of demand for someone who understands how people try to cheat the system. And every time someone tells me I'm not impressive enough, I just smile and think about 2 people sitting in prison cells, finally understanding that reliable can be the most dangerous thing of all.